This is the Book Legion Podcast, where we review thought-provoking books to give our Legionnaires the knowledge they need to dominate the next level of their life.
Thanks so much for tuning in this week on the Book Legion. This is your host, Tyzer Evans. This week, I'm going to be completing my Steven Pressfield series with this last book, The War of Art. So if you have not tuned in the last 2 weeks and learned a little bit about Do the Work and Turning Pro by Steven Pressfield, let's just recap on Steven Pressfield once again. So Steven Pressfield's a really prolific writer. He writes fiction and nonfiction alike. He's probably most well known, though, for this nonfiction book, The War of Arts, the one that I feel like really put him on the map as a prolific writer. I think this personally is one of the top 25 greatest personal development books ever written. That's just, again, me personally. And so a lot of what he writes about, again, is going to be fiction and nonfiction, but the nonfiction stuff is a lot about how do you become a pro? How do you start to shed your amateur life and turn pro? So Steven Pressfield, again, he has always sought to be a writer. Throughout his 20s and 30s, he necessarily wasn't a well-known writer, especially in his 20s. He was a bit nomadic, moved back and forth from the West and the East Coast about 13 times as a truck driver, worked out on farms, lived in a cabin in Northern California, kind of had a very eccentric life. At one point was married in his 20s, then subsequently got divorced. All because he really just wanted to sit, think, and write, but he was scared to do so. So a lot of the book talks a lot about his own thoughts and kind of leading up a lot about turning pro and do the work. It kind of all comes together in this book. I think this book, some of those other books were parts of this book that he wrote. So really what he talks about, though, is that to find fulfillment for him is being a writer. And what we need to do is find that calling, find that passion, find that obsession, and then go all in on that work, because it's what brings us joy, what brings us happiness, what brings us fulfillment. It's the thing that's going to get us spiritually to evolve, right? It's going to continue to make us grow and push because we want to get better, because we're obsessed about whatever this endeavor is. And this could be obsessed with making your relationships great in your life, obsessed with your spirituality, obsessed with your finances, obsessed with your career, obsessed with a game. It could be basketball or football or baseball or whatever it is. Whatever it is, Pressfield's whole thing is get off the sidelines and start playing. So I'm going to cover my 3 big takeaways from the book. Again, the book is broke up like his other ones into basically book 1, book 2, and book 3. But every page, as you'll see if you're watching this on YouTube, is kind of like its own little chapter. You can see like this right here. This chapter is literally just a paragraph. The book is a little bit longer than his other ones. It's 165 pages, but still a relatively short read. Yesterday, I was on page 80 and finished the book yesterday. So it's a really quick read. Like all of his other ones, they're very entertaining, so a lot of fun to read. So let's jump into my 3 big takeaways before I get off on another tangent. So my first big takeaway for me, or the one that I want to share with you, is on page 15, which is resistance plays for keeps. And remember, what we're talking about is getting away from resistance. Resistance is what keeps us from doing our passion, our work, right? You're having that force of average, as Ryan Stewman likes to call it. Something is preventing you from doing it, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Something is preventing you from doing it. So this book is to kind of walk through that and how do we break this down. But also wants you to be real about what's happening in your life. And so this part, resistance plays for keeps. So resistance is the enemy, right? Resistance is keeping us from our greatness. Resistance goal is not to wound or disable. Resistance aims to kill. Its target is the epicenter of our being, our genius, our soul, the unique, priceless gift we are put here on earth to give, and that no one else has but us. Resistance means business. When we fight it, we are in a war to the death. And so why I want to bring this is because, again, when you're self-sabotaging, because that's really what I see resistance is, it's self-sabotaging. When you self-sabotage yourself, like you fucking take yourself all the way out, right? And then you justify it in your mind, right? Resistance aims to kill. It's something that I highlighted in the book. Resistance aims to kill. Kills your dreams, kills your momentum, right? It kills your positive momentum. And so what resistance does, and why I like to talk about this, is because so many people have an idea, or they have a vision, or they have a goal. And then once they realize, like, wow, that's a big goal. Like maybe your goal is to save $10 million. And you go, well, I only make $60,000 a year. There's no way for me to be able to save $10 million, to make $10 million. As opposed to, like Tony Robbins talks about, asking better questions and realizing that's the resistance seeping in. It is aiming to kill your dream of saving $10 million. Now, the question, if you're a true professional and you want to get in the arena, you want to start to play the game of life and compete, the question then becomes, how do I save $10 million on a $60,000 budget? Now, if you deem that that's not possible mathematically, then what is possible mathematically? Okay, well, maybe you need to figure out, instead of making $60,000, you need to make $150,000. So then how do you get that delta from 60 to 150? How do you make that extra $90,000? Maybe you're in the wrong type of financial vehicle. Maybe you need to level up your skill set. Maybe you need to go back to school. So it's not necessarily can't be done, it just may not be done the way that you think or the way that you want. So this is always constantly pivoting. This is understanding how important is your dream to you? How important is the work? Do you want to lead a life of fulfillment and joy? Or do you want to leave someone who's kind of sitting on the sidelines? No, you have more to offer, you have no more to give, but resistance keeps killing your dreams. And remember, take this with you. The next time you know you should be doing something and you didn't go do it, resistance won. And remember, resistance aims to kill. The next takeaway for me is all the way over to page 77, a professional seeks order. And so this is, again, it's a really short, just like little paragraph. And he was talking about a story when he was living in his Chevy van. He did live in his van for a bit and stuff was everywhere, right? And so when I think about this, and this is something that not a lot of professionals think about, or quote unquote professionals, right? So I'm using air quotes for those listening to the podcast, that we typically are not as organized as we should be when it comes to working on our genius, our muse. So if you're a writer, and you've got scattered papers everywhere, and it's a bit of chaos in your office, that's not creating an environment for you to flush through really clean, brilliant, great ideas. And so what this talks a lot about is take account that you're a professional. So let me just read it to you, exactly what it says. The professional cannot live like that. And he's talking about him living in his truck and being in chaos. He is on a mission. He will not tolerate disorder. He eliminates chaos from his world in order to banish it from his mind. He wants the carpet vacuumed, the threshold swept, so the muse may enter and not soil her ground. Wow, that's powerful. So eliminate the chaos from his world in order to banish it from his mind. Right? So that's what I'm talking about. And I learned this a long time ago, really random, like in junior high, watching an episode of Oprah. And Oprah was talking about the feng shui, right? Your energy of like your room. And if you're in a room, your bedroom, that's really messy. Your clothes everywhere, stuff piled up, your dresser's cluttered, then you kind of are walking into that chaos, you're walking into that energy, and it affects your sleep. It affects your well-being. I just recently cleaned my office and I walked out and I told my wife, I said, hey, when I walked back in my office, it just felt lighter. It just felt better. And so it's really important that when you're going to do your work, whatever your genius is, if you're a writer, an actor, you're a salesperson, have nothing on your desk. Have your phone, have your notes, right? To write, be able to write your notes, but have everything organized. Have your prospecting list. It's all about getting out of chaos, because when you get out of chaos in your physical realm, it helps to remove the chaos from your mind so you can be clear intentioned. Like he talks about that very last line, be clear intentioned, right? He wants the carpet vacuumed and the threshold swept so the muse may enter and not soil her ground. So it means the muse can enter, your genius can enter, and you can do the work and there's no chaos and it won't affect your results. So soil in the ground means that you're not going to affect the results. Now let's move on to my